Next, uvea. Now guys, I forgot to tell you about uvea, but just look over here. In the structural anatomy, did I tell you any structure is there which is called as uvea? No. Why? Because uvea itself is not a structure. Uvea is a combination of structure, guys. Okay? Uvea is a combination of structures. Uvea is divided into anterior uvea, intermediate uvea and posterior uvea. Uvea is divided into what, guys? Anterior uvea, intermediate uvea and posterior uvea. Anterior uvea is what? Iris. Okay? Once again, guys, just look over here. We are talking about what? Just look over here. What am I drawing over here? What am I drawing over here? Ciliary body. What is this part of the ciliary body? Everyone can easily tell. What is this part of the ciliary body? Pars plana, sir. Okay. What is this structure? Ciliary zonule. What is this? Lens. Just in front of the lens, iris. And what is this structure? Cornea. Okay, cornea is a bit large over here. So what we'll do is, okay, so just look over here. Now imagine this is the cornea. Now guys, I told you what is this, the space between iris and cornea is anterior chamber, and iris and lens is called as posterior chamber. We were talking about uvea. Uvea is divided into anterior uvea, intermediate and posterior uvea. Anterior uvea is what? Iris is called as anterior uvea. Iris is called as anterior uvea. Whereas intermediate uvea consists of ciliary body. Intermediate uvea consists of what, guys? Ciliary body. Intermediate uvea consists of ciliary body. And posterior uvea means what? Posterior uvea is the second layer of the eye, which is called as choroid. So inflammation of any of these three layers is called as uveitis. Depending upon what part is involved, it is called as anterior uveitis, intermediate uveitis or posterior uveitis. Anterior uvea is iris, intermediate uvea is ciliary body, whereas posterior uvea is what, guys? Choroid, and some part of retina is also involved with posterior uvea, right? Next is what, guys? Iris. Iris. Come on, guys. What we need to remember about iris first is the derivation of the iris. Iris is derived from. Come on, guys. Should I write there, or you can write there? Write by your own thinking. Yes or no? We can easily recollect. Where is the iris derived from? Iris is derived from what, guys? Iris is derived from mesoderm. SIC, mesoderm. What is the function of the iris? It is a thing that gives color to the eyeball, right? This iris is also called as what? It is also called as goddess of rainbow. Goddess of rainbow. Next layer of the eye is called as ciliary body. We have already discussed about the ciliary body. There are two parts of the ciliary body. This is the ciliary body which I am talking about, right? The pigmented part of the ciliary body is called as pars plana, whereas the non-pigmented part of the ciliary body is called as pars plicata. Imagine which I am drawing is a pigmented part. The pigmented is pars plana, whereas the non-pigmented is pars plicata. The function of pars plana, remember, guys, ciliary body gives rise to ciliary zonule, which holds the lens. In front of the lens is iris, okay? The function of pars plicata is to produce the vitreous humor, whereas the function of ciliary body, which is called as pars plicata, the non-pigmented part, it's to produce the aqueous humor. The aqueous humor is produced from the ciliary body. Okay? So ciliary body is having two parts. What are the two parts of ciliary body? One part of the ciliary body is called as pars plicata, whereas the other part of the ciliary body is called as pars plana. And what is the ora serrata, guys? I told you what is ora serrata. Ora serrata you can write there. Ora serrata is what? It is the junction between ciliary body and retina. Junction between ciliary body and retina. That is ora serrata, right? So, anyways, guys, we are discussing about what? We are discussing about the ciliary body and all. Okay. Now, coming to the third layer of the eye, which is called as choroid. Second layer of the eye, which is called as choroid. Come on, guys. Choroid, I told you something about choroid. What I told you about choroid? You can easily tell it is the second layer of the eye. It is derived from what? It is derived from what, guys? It is derived from mesoderm, right? And I told you 85% of the blood circulation is occurring in the choroid by special veins, which are called as vortex veins. Which are called as vortex veins. Okay. This is regarding what, guys? This is regarding choroid, right? Coming to the next structure, which is the innermost structure of the eye, which is called as retina. Once again, guys, retina, first we need to know the derivation of retina. Derivation of retina. Come on, guys, retina is derived from, it is derived from neural ectoderm. Retina is derived from neural ectoderm. It is the third and the innermost layer that begins from ora serrata, right? I told you this is the most important layer for neural perception, or this is the most important layer for your vision. For your vision. In center of the retina, you see macula. And in the center of the macula, the most light sensitive area of the eye you see is what, guys? Fovea centralis. Fovea centralis. Why fovea centralis is regarded as the most light sensitive area? Why? Because in this fovea centralis, you have the maximum number of rods and cones. Rods and cones. Okay? Basically, the maximum number of cones are seen, not rods. Basically, the maximum number of cones are seen in fovea centralis. Hence, it is the most light sensitive area of the eye. Okay? That was fovea centralis. Now, guys, look over here, look over here. We are still discussing about what? We are still discussing about the retina. I told you that eye is supplied by some nerve. What is that nerve that supplies the eye called as optic nerve? Optic nerve. What is the function of optic nerve? What is the function of optic nerve? It supplies the eye, it helps in the movement. Just cut this point. Right. So, optic nerve. Optic nerve is supplying the eye, and the beginning part of the optic nerve is called as optic disc. The beginning part of the optic nerve is called as what, guys? Optic disc. That optic disc is also regarded as the blind spot of the eye. That optic disc is also called as what, guys? Blind spot of the eye. Blind spot of the eye. Right? So, optic nerve. Optic disc is the beginning part of the optic disc is the beginning part of the optic nerve. It is a beginning part of, you can write there, optic nerve. What is the diameter of this optic disc? The diameter of the optic disc is similar to the diameter of fovea centralis. How much, guys? 1.5 mm. Whereas, what's the diameter of this macula? Macula holds these things, right? The diameter of the macula is 5.5 mm. In that, 1.5 mm is fovea centralis. Okay. Next, coming to anterior chamber. Come on, guys. I have divided the eye into anterior chamber and posterior chamber. What does anterior chamber means? Again, this is the ciliary body. Pars plana, ciliary zonules, lens, iris, and here is the cornea, right? The space between the cornea and iris, is called as anterior chamber. The space between iris and lens is called as posterior chamber. What is the depth of anterior chamber? It is 2.5 mm. The depth of anterior chamber is 2.5 mm. But some of the patients will be having shallow anterior chamber, and some of the patient will be having deep anterior chamber. You see a shallow anterior chamber in women, elderly, and children. Shallow anterior chamber is seen in women, elderly, and children. Women, elderly, and children. Whereas deep anterior chamber is seen in young males and myopes. Deep anterior chamber is seen in young males and myopes, right? Next coming to the fluid compartment of the eye. The fluid compartment. Come on guys, I told you, eye is having two fluid compartments. One fluid compartment is called as aqueous humor, whereas the other fluid compartment is called as vitreous humor. Vitreous humor. What is the function of aqueous humor, guys? Come on. What is the function of aqueous humor? You guys know where is aqueous humor formed? Yes, sir. We know where is aqueous humor formed. Aqueous humor is formed by pars plicator, the non-pigmented part of the ciliary body. But what is the function of aqueous humor? The main function of aqueous humor is to provide nutrition to the avascular structures of the eyeball. What is the avascular structures which are there in the eye? The cornea and lens. This aqueous humor is rich in vitamin C, right? This aqueous humor is rich in vitamin C and lactate. Vitamin C and lactate, right? And it is also having some glucose. It supplies some glucose to the cornea as well as lens. Now guys, imagine if I wear contact lens for a long period of time, will it hamper my aqueous humor formation? No, sir. It won't hamper my aqueous humor formation. Why? Because aqueous humor is formed somewhere inside the eye by pars plicator. If you wear contact lenses, there is no problem to the formation of aqueous humor. But if you wear contact lenses for a longer period of time, what will get hampered to the eye? It's not the formation of aqueous humor. It is basically when you wear contact lenses for a long period of time, the oxygen supply is hampered. Remember guys, eye derives its nutrition. Eye derives its nutrition from aqueous humor. It's glucose from aqueous humor. But eye derives the oxygen. The eyeball derives the oxygen from where? From the atmosphere. If you wear contact lenses for a long period of time, you will basically, I will be deprived of what? I will be deprived of oxygen supply, not the glucose supply, not the nutrition supply. Not the glucose as well as not the nutrition supply, right? So this is regarding what, guys? This is regarding the aqueous humor. So just write there, guys, write there. The main function of aqueous humor. The main function of aqueous humor is what? What is the main function, guys? The main function of aqueous humor is to provide nutrition to the avascular structures of the eye. Provide nutrition to the avascular structures of eye, such as cornea and lens. Such as cornea and lens. Aqueous humor is rich in vitamin C, lactate as well as glucose. Aqueous humor is rich in vitamin C, lactate and glucose. Okay. Oxygen supply to the eye is from atmosphere. Oxygen supply to the eye is from atmosphere. Okay. Now, if you wear contact lenses for a long time, what will happen, guys? If you wear contact lenses for a long time, what will happen? If you wear contact lenses for a longer duration, the oxygen supply to the eye will be gone. Oxygen supply will be decreased, but the glucose supply will be intact, or but the nutrition will be intact. But nutrition will be intact. Why is the nutrition still intact? Why? Because eye derives its nutrition from aqueous humor. Aqueous humor. So basically, contact lenses blocks the oxygen supply. Okay? Now, lens is anaerobic, guys. 85% of the ATP is being synthesized by anaerobic respiration. Just write there. Lens is anaerobic and 85% of ATPs are synthesized anaerobically. Synthesized anaerobically. Okay. So anyways, guys, we are talking still about aqueous humor, right? So if you guys concentrate over here, just look over here, guys. If you guys concentrate over here, we are talking about what? We are talking about the aqueous humor production and how is the aqueous humor being flown, right? Once again, we'll go for the structural anatomy of the eye so that we can understand the things clearly, okay? So you must be crystal clear what is the structure. What is this structure, guys? This is cornea, this is sclera, junction between cornea and sclera is limbus. So I'm not talking about those. Directly we'll go for the kill over here. Look over here, guys. This is ciliary body. This is ciliary bodies. Okay. Ciliary body. This is pars plana. The non-pigmented is plicata. Here is ciliary zonule holding the lens. And again, I'll just give a color. Now I'm giving this color. You can see what is this color? Blue color. The colored structure is the iris. So anyways, guys, my question to you was, what is the aqueous humor flow? Aqueous humor, first of all, aqueous humor is being produced by pars plicata. How it is produced by pars plicata? Aqueous humor is produced by pars plicata by three mechanisms. There are three mechanisms by which aqueous humor is formed. One mechanism is called as diffusion. Other mechanism is called as ultrafiltration, and last mechanism is called as secretion. Aqueous humor is formed by these three mechanisms, but 70% of the aqueous humor is formed by secretion. Secretion. Just look over here, guys. As aqueous humor is formed by pars plicata, where does it go? From pars plicata, it goes into the posterior chamber. From the posterior chamber, through the, remember guys, the space between the upper iris and lower iris, I forgot to tell you this. This imaginary space between the upper iris and the lower iris is called as pupil. This is called as pupil. You might have seen, our pupils usually constrict. Whenever you put a light, constrict. Whenever you go into the dark, the pupils dilate. There is no structure called as pupil in the eye. There is no structure called as uvea in the eye. Okay? What is this pupil? Pupil is an imaginary space between what? The upper iris and lower iris. That is called as pupil. Same uvea. Uvea kaisa koi structure tha kya? Uvea. There is no structure called as uvea. Uvea was divided into anterior, intermediate and posterior. So guys, anyways, the space between the upper iris and the lower iris is called as what, guys? Pupil. This is called as pupil. So, as the aqueous humor is being formed from the pars plicata, it goes to the posterior chamber. From the posterior chamber, through the pupil, it enters the anterior chamber. From the anterior chamber, it goes into a small structure called as angle. From the angle, it goes to some small structures, mesh-like structures, which is called as trabecular meshwork. Trabecular meshwork, right? This is basically the filtering thing over here. From the trabecular meshwork, it goes into a canal which is called as Schlem's canal. And from there, it drains into the veins which are called as, those veins are usually related to the sclera, those veins are called as episcleral veins. Those veins are called as what, guys? Episcleral veins. So we are still discussing about what? We are discussing about the flow of aqueous humor. Right? First of all, we need to understand how is the aqueous humor formed. Aqueous humor is the fluid component of the eye which is formed from the pars plicata, part of the ciliary body, by three processes called as diffusion, ultrafiltration and secretion. And 70% of the aqueous humor is formed by what? Secretion. Once the aqueous humor is being formed, it goes into the posterior chamber. Through the pupil, it enters the anterior chamber. Through the anterior chamber, it goes into a structure called as angle. From the angle, it enters this mesh-like structure which is called as what, guys? Trabecular meshwork. From the trabecular meshwork, it goes into the Schlem's canal, ultimately draining into what, guys? Ultimately draining into the episcleral veins. Ultimately it drains into the episcleral veins. That is the flow of aqueous humor. That is the flow of aqueous humor, right? If at all, this flow of aqueous humor is hampered. If at all, imagine the patient is having trabecular meshwork fibrosis. The trabecular meshwork gets fibrosed. What will happen to the flow of aqueous humor? The aqueous cannot go or cannot flow inside. If the aqueous is not flowing and draining out, what will happen? That aqueous humor accumulates inside the eye, leading to a high intraocular pressure. You know what is intraocular pressure, guys? What is that intraocular pressure? Intraocular pressure is the pressure exerted by aqueous and vitreous humor on the eyeball. The pressure exerted by the fluid component of the eye is called as intraocular pressure. If the aqueous humor is not flowing out, aqueous humor gets accumulated in the eye, leading to a high intraocular pressure that can lead to glaucoma. That can lead to what, guys? Glaucoma. So anyways, we are talking about what? We are not talking about glaucoma, we are talking about what? The flow of aqueous humor. That is very, very important. Okay. So, aqueous humor we were discussing, right? Aqueous humor is produced by non-pigmented part of the ciliary body, which is called as what? Pars plicata, by three mechanisms. 70% I told you it is formed by what? Secretion. 70% of the aqueous humor is formed by what, guys? Secretion. Apart from that, ultrafiltration and diffusion also. Ultrafiltration and diffusion also. So, three things are there for the formation of aqueous humor. Diffusion, ultrafiltration and secretion. 70% of the time it is formed by secretion. Now, this aqueous humor is formed by pars plicata at a tremendous rate. What rate it is being formed? It is formed at a rate of 2.5 microliters per minute. 2.5. It is not ml, guys. It is 2.5 microliters per minute. As it is being formed at 2.5, I told you it has to drain also in the episcleral veins. The drainage value, the speed at which aqueous humor is formed is 2.5 microliters per minute. The speed at which the aqueous humor is drained from the episcleral veins, it is 0.22 microliters per minute, which is also called as the exit value or the C value. Which is also called as what value, guys? The exit value or C value. Exit value or C value, right? So, aqueous humor production rate we have to remember, aqueous humor outflow we have to remember, right? Aqueous humor is also acting as a refractive media. I told you what is the refractive index in the aqueous humor? It is 1.33. In vitreous humor also it is 1.33. So aqueous humor acts as a refractive media which maintains the intraocular pressure and provides nutrition. We have already discussed. Circulation of the aqueous humor also we have already discussed, guys. What is the circulation of aqueous humor? 90% of the aqueous, remember guys, 90% of the aqueous usually flows through this pathway. Okay? 10% of the aqueous humor is drained by uveoscleral pathway. That is a different pathway, uveoscleral. So 90% is the conventional. So first it is formed by pars plicatum, then it goes into the posterior chamber, then anterior chamber, then through the pupil. First of all, you have to remember, right, it pars plicatum, from the pars plicatum it goes to the posterior chamber. Through the posterior, from the posterior it has to go into the anterior. How it is going? Through via pupil. Then in the anterior chamber it goes into the angle, trabecular meshwork, Schlemm's canal, lastly draining into what? Episcleral veins. So this pathway, this flow of aqueous humor, this is called as conventional flow. This is called as what, guys? Conventional flow. This is the conventional flow of aqueous humor, right? 90% of the aqueous humor goes by this pathway. 10% it goes by uveoscleral pathway. Uveoscleral pathway. Okay. So that's regarding what, guys? That's regarding what? That's regarding the aqueous humor. That's regarding the aqueous humor. Now, what else we need to remember? Vitreous humor. Vitreous humor. Aqueous humor, we are thorough about what is aqueous humor, what is it doing and all. How about vitreous humor? Vitreous humor. I told you the volume of the eyeball is 6 ml. The volume of the orbit is 30 ml. From that the eyeball volume is 6 ml. From that 6 ml, 4 ml is the volume of the vitreous humor. What is the function of vitreous humor? What was the function of aqueous humor? To provide nutrition. What is the function of vitreous humor? Whenever there is any trauma to the eye won't blast. Why? Because there is a shock absorber that prevents the blasting of the eye. What is a shock absorber? A gel-like solution called as what? Vitreous humor. It is a gel-like solution that acts as the shock absorber to the eye. Where does this vitreous humor form from? Vitreous humor is formed from pars plana. Is it formed daily at a rate of 2.5? No. Aqueous humor is formed at the rate of 2.5 microliters per minute. But vitreous humor, it is formed by pars plana only once. It is a gel-like solution, right? So vitreous humor 70, basically I can say vitreous humor is 70% of the eyeball. 70% of the eye is vitreous humor, which is the single largest structure of the eyeball. About how many ml, guys? 4 ml. It maintains the intraocular pressure as well as the shape of the eyeball. If you compare aqueous with vitreous humor, what comparisons you will see over here? What comparisons you can see over here? Aqueous humor is a solution. Aqueous humor function is different. It provides nutrition to the okay? Vitreous humor is a shock absorber to the retina, right? Next, if aqueous humor production stops, if the ciliary body called as pars plicatum is damaged, what will happen? The eyeball will shrink. Shrinkage of the eyeball is the last stage of the eye, which is called as phthisis bulbi. Which is called as phthisis bulbi, right? What does this vitreous humor consist of? Vitreous humor is 99% of water and 1% of hyaluronic acid. 1% of hyaluronic acid. The main function of vitreous humor is what, guys? It is a shock absorber that maintains the shape of the eyeball. Okay? Now, next, guys. Vitreous humor. Vitreous humor, this is no production. This is the production rate of aqueous humor, not vitreous, guys. Just cut it. Vitreous humor, it is not produced at this rate and all. It is not produced at this rate. Okay? Basically, okay, if you don't want to cut it, what we can do over here is just write there. This is vitreous humor, this is aqueous humor. Aqueous humor is produced by a rate of 2.5 microliters per minute with an exit value of 0.22. And if you want to approach to the aqueous humor, you have to go through the limbus. Limbus means what, guys? Limbus is what? The junction between the cornea and sclera is called as limbus. Vitreous humor, is it produced daily? No sir, it is not produced daily. It is produced only once. Okay? And how do you approach towards the vitreous humor? If you want to approach the vitreous humor, you can approach it through pars plana. Through pars plana. Okay? Next. This is regarding what, guys? This is regarding vitreous humor. Now coming to the structure which is called as. So guys, let us start with this topic of lens. Okay? Lens. Regarding lens, we'll first start with the derivation. Where is the lens derived from? From which embryonic structure is the lens derived from? I told you guys, lens, conjunctiva, cornea. These are derived from conjunctiva, cornea and lens, CCL. These are derived from surface ectoderm. So lens is derived from what, guys? Surface ectoderm. Lens is derived from surface ectoderm. Now, just write there, lens is derived from surface ectoderm. Now the lens is made up of some proteins, guys. This crystalline lens, we are just talking about this lens. This structure called as lens. This lens is made up of some proteins called as crystalline proteins. Basically, the highest concentration of protein in our body is seen in lens. And the least amount of water in our body is seen in lens. 65% of water is there in lens and 35% it is made up of proteins. It is the highest concentration of protein in the body. Okay? Now guys, regarding the lens, this lens is held in the position by two structures called as ciliary zonules. Ciliary zonules. Now when we are looking at the anatomy of the lens, I told you lens is made up of crystalline proteins. As we are growing, lens is also growing. Lens grows throughout the lifetime. But which is the oldest component of the lens? The oldest component of the lens is called as the nucleus. The nucleus of the lens is called as the oldest component of the lens. Right? This is the cortex of the lens and this is the nucleus of the lens. Nucleus is regarded as the oldest component of the lens. Okay? Now, so as we are growing, the lens is also growing and the oldest component of the lens is what, guys? The oldest component of the lens is the nucleus. Now, look over here, guys. Lens is, who is holding the lens? The ciliary zonules. Lens is covered by a capsule on each side. Okay? Lens is covered by a capsule on each side, a blanket on each side. Okay? Now, this is the anterior capsule and here is the posterior capsule. There have been questions asking you about which is the thinnest part of the lens from where the lens can easily rupture. The thinnest part of the lens is the posterior subcapsular part. Is the posterior subcapsular part. Subcapsular part where the lens can easily rupture. The thinnest part of the lens is the posterior subcapsular part. What is the thickest part of the lens? Lens is thickest at the equator. This is the equatorial region of the lens. This is regarded as the thickest part of the lens. This is regarded as the thickest part of the lens. Now guys, we are talking about what? Lens. Lens is basically a transparent structure which is made up of crystalline proteins. It is derived from surface ectoderm, right? We know the thinnest part of the lens. We know the thickest part of the lens. The thinnest part of the lens is what, guys? The posterior subcapsular part. The thickest is the equatorial part. What else we need to remember? How is the lens deriving its nutrition? The lens derives its nutrition from the aqueous humor. Lens is submerged in the sea of aqueous humor. It derives the nutrition from the aqueous humor, right? As I already told you, aqueous humor is rich in what? It is rich in vitamin C. How is that vitamin C going into the lens? The vitamin C is transported to the lens from the aqueous humor by an enzyme called as myoionositol. It is called as what, guys? Myoionositol, right? So we are talking about what? We are talking about the lens. Starting with what, guys? I told you the derivation. Lens is derived from, okay, we have already known that lens is derived from surface ectoderm. After the derivation, what else we need to know? As we are growing, yani ki basically lens grows throughout the lifetime. Lens grows throughout the lifetime. And which is the oldest component of the lens? The oldest component of the lens is the nucleus. Nucleus is regarded as the oldest component of the lens. Lens is made up of, I told you, what proteins lens is made up of? Lens is made up of crystalline proteins. Lens is made up of crystalline proteins, right? And I also told you who is holding the lens. The ciliary zonules hold the lens. The ciliary zonule holds the lens in the proper position. Guys, you know what is a disease commonly seen in the lens? There is a disease that is commonly seen in the lens. That is the most common cause of blindness in India. What is that disease? Opacification of the lens of the capsule is called as what disease, guys? Cataract. Very good. Cataract. Okay. So anyways, the ciliary zonules hold the lens in the proper position. Then I told you lens is submerged in the sea of aqueous humor. In the sea of aqueous humor. Lens is submerged in the sea of aqueous humor. Vitamin C is transported to the lens by what, guys? By myoionositol. Ionositol. Okay? Vitamin C to the lens is transported by myoionositol. Coming to the, I told you lens is covered by capsule on each side, guys. Lens is covered by capsule on each sides, right? Which is the thinnest part of the lens? Again, very important, guys. Thinnest parts are very important. Thinnest part of the cornea, center part. Thinnest part of the sclera where the rectus muscle attached to it. And apart from that, what else we need to remember? Thinnest part of the lens is what? Thinnest part is posterior subcapsular part. Posterior subcapsular part. Whereas what is the thickest part of the lens? The thickest part of the lens is what, guys? Lens is thickest at the equator. The thickest part of the lens is at the equator. So this is regarding what, guys? This is regarding the lens anatomy. Okay. Is this clear? Yes or no? This is regarding the lens anatomy. Okay. Thinnest part, thickest part. Now what else we need to know about the lens? The diameter of the lens, guys. The equatorial diameter of the lens. We have already discussed the equatorial diameter of the lens is 9 mm. But at birth, this diameter is 6.5 mm. One more thing regarding lens, what you need to remember, the respiratory quotient of lens. The respiratory quotient of lens is 1. The respiratory quotient is 1. Whereas the equatorial diameter, what's the equatorial diameter of the lens, guys? 9.5 mm. But at birth it is how much? 6.5 mm. That is regarding the lens. Now coming to what? coming to anterior segment and posterior segment. We are still dealing with the anatomy of the eye, guys. Be thorough with the anatomy so that other things becomes very easy for you. Anterior segment and posterior segment. If I divide the eye into two halves, come on guys, look over here. If I divide this eye into two halves, imagine this is the eye. Come on, be fast. This is the ciliary body. This is plana. Other is plicata. Here is ciliary. Come on. Zonule. This is lens. Here is iris. So anterior segment, I'm not talking about anterior chamber. Anterior segment means anything which is coming in front of the lens. Anything in front of the lens is called as anterior segment. So basically anterior segment means what? It is basically anterior chamber plus posterior chamber. Anterior segment means what? Anything in front of lens. Anything in front of lens is anterior segment. That is anterior chamber plus posterior chamber. Whereas what is posterior segment means? Anything that is behind lens is called as posterior segment. Posterior segment. Right? We know guys what is the ciliary body and all. Ciliary body is basically pars plicata and pars plana. There are two functions of ciliary body. One function of ciliary body is what? They help in the formation of fluid components of the eye. The other function of ciliary body is what, guys? Ciliary body helps in the process of accommodation. Ciliary body helps in the process of what, guys? Accommodation. What is accommodation, guys? What is meant by the thing called as accommodation? Now, guys, if I tell you to look at the far object or look at the far thing, okay? Imagine you are looking at the far thing and suddenly I give you a pencil, okay? You are looking at the far thing and I hold a pencil. You are just looking at the far thing, okay? Suddenly I tell you to move your vision to a near object. From far to near, as you are shifting your vision from a far object to a near object, your eyes undergo accommodation. Your eyes undergo a process called as accommodation. What is this accommodation, guys? Accommodation is what? Accommodation is what, guys? Just imagine, guys, this is the ciliary body. Imagine my upper hand and the lower hand is the ciliary body. When I am telling you to move your vision from a far to a near thing, what happens? Your ciliary muscles contract and the ciliary zonules relax. What is the function of zonule? It is holding the lens. Okay? So during accommodation, the ciliary muscles contract and the ciliary zonules relax and the lens undergoes accommodation. That's most important structure. Remember, guys, ciliary muscles help in accommodation. But the most important structure without which accommodation or without which near vision is not possible is what? Lens. Lens is the most important thing that undergoes accommodation in our eye. So guys, we are still talking about what? We are talking about accommodation. So I told you ciliary body ka function kya hai? The function of ciliary body is aqueous humor production, vitreous humor production, and they also helps in the form. They also helps for. So now we have discussed the anterior segment. We have discussed the posterior segment of the eye. Right? Now coming to the total power of the eye. Total power of the eye. What is the total power of the eye? The total power of the eye is 60 diopters. In that 60 diopters, come on guys, cornea is very, 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 very important. If your cornea is damaged, basically you are nearly blind. Nearly you are blind only. Cornea plays an important role, not only maintaining your refractive index, not only maintaining the refractive index, it is also important for the power of the eye, right? So remember guys, the total power of the eye is how much? 60 diopters. In that 60 diopters, 47 diopters is of the cornea, guys. How much? 43 diopters is of the cornea. 43 diopters is of the cornea. How much we are left out with? 17 diopters. 17 diopters is of the lens. The total power of the eye is 60 diopters. In that 43 diopters is cornea and 17 diopters is of the lens. Okay. Now guys, look over here. the length between the cornea, from the cornea till the last part of the retina, this length is called as the axial length, or this is also called as anterior posterior diameter. This is called as axial length or anterior posterior diameter. The axial length or anterior posterior diameter of the eyeball is how much, guys? It is 24 mm. It is 24 mm. And at birth, this diameter is 16.5 mm. 16.5 mm. These values you have to remember, guys. You have to remember these values, okay? This is regarded as the anterior posterior diameter of the eyeball, okay?